Hello everybody, welcome to the aoe2 AI scripting tutorial number 11. Goals part 2, goals as facts. This is the index for this tutorial video. We're going to start with goals as facts, some explanation of what we are going to do or what we can do. Goals as facts. The readout of fact values given integer. We read the value of a fact ID into a goal. We can chat a readout of the goal value for debug reason or for allies, for instance. And we can compare this goal value to constants, other goals and strategic numbers. Let's get into it. Uploading the fact values into goals. Here we have some examples of commands to read and upload the fact values into goals. Commands which refer to the self, or commands that refer to self and other player facts. The syntax is, for instance, for the self facts, upget fact, the fact ID, parameter, don't worry about that, we'll see that in a minute, and it gets read or uploaded into a goal. Of course, if it refers to other players, then you have to put in a player. For upget fact minimum, maximum and sum, it is of the AnyPlayer options. If it's upget player fact, it can be a single player option. We will look at that also in a minute. To give an example, first we need to have a look at the facts. Facts IDs, any player and single player. Fact IDs, I will refer to Leaf's encyclopedia, which has a very extensive overview of all the fact IDs. You see here an ID number, which should be def consted to avoid bugs and stuff. The name of the fact ID. The description of what the fact ID gives for a value. The parameter. Now the parameter is 0 if you don't need a parameter. For instance, game time, the elapsed game time in seconds, doesn't need a parameter, so that's just 0. Of course, if you want to know an escrow amount, which is your resource savings, the parameter is a resource. Or you want to know the commodity buying price, then the parameter is also, I would say, a resource, but it's a commodity. A commodity is a resource without gold. If you want to know what the possibilities or parameters are, you can always click through, and the encyclopedia gives you the options. You have a whole list of facts with information, and in the last column you can see if you can use this fact on the self, or better said only on the self, or if you can use a fact for any players or other players. For instance, we will have a look at military population, defcons 31, doesn't have a parameter, and you can get the fact for other players' military population. So we get an ID, a name, a description, a parameter, 0 if not required, otherwise this is filled with resource commodity, unit ID, building ID and so forth. Available players is for who it's available for. The AnyPlayer, if we have a look again at the encyclopedia, we go to player ID, we go to AnyPlayer, and here we get an overview of the possibilities. 0 is Gaia, 1 to 8 is a player's player ID. My player number, which we have used in the past, retrieves a player number for self. Target player, focus player, and you got wildcards, which you can see here. Any ally, any computer, any human, every ally, this any ally, this any computer, and so forth. If we look at AnyPlayer, the IDs are negative, yes, and it's something any, which means here for AnyPlayer you can use something out of this range, any ally to any neutral, not the other ones, or not the single IDs. If you look at get player fact single player, the readout of goal fact values, we have done this a few times in the past. That's with the upchat data to all, to player and to self, with the syntax a string with a %d. A %d gives the value that's here in the value. The prefix to say if the value here is a constant, a goal, or a strategic number. Upchat data to player. In player you can put single player, every, this, any, self. You can choose. The parameters are here. We can also do comparisons of facts goal values. This is with these commands, up compare constant, where we compare the constant with the value. Up compare goal, a goal compared with the value. Up compare as then a strategic number with the value, and a value can be a constant, a goal, or a strategic number. Compare up, we saw this in a previous video, is a relative operator preceded with a prefix. Example. Now we're going to work out an example after all this confusing theory. You can go back to the theory after looking at this example. It will become clearer. So first we have to def const, for instance, military population 31. What we're going to do is we're going to create a sit rep, a goal, my military, I'm going to give it number 40. I'm going to speed things up. Goal, largest enemy military, goal 41. Goal, some ally military, some enemy military 43. Also, we want to define a timer because we want the sitrep not to how do you say it, constantly activate or repeat itself. To initiate the timer, we will enable the timer sitrep. Can immediately activate after 1 second, and we disable self as that is an initiator. Then what do we want? Def rule. When the timer is triggered, which timer sitrep, we want to get upget fact military population 0 for the parameter my military. So it will get the military population of self. You want to get the max military population of any enemy. That's the largest enemy military. We also want the sum of any ally military population. This will count the military populations of all the allies. You also want the sum of the enemy note that for the sum, as the syntax requires us to do, we use any enemy, not every enemy. Also, a little sneak peek into next video's lesson, which will be calculating with goals. Goal sum ally military. Why do we need to do a calculation? It's because we want the sum of our team. Now we've got our military population and we've got the total of the allies' military population, but to compare it with the total military population of the enemy, we have to add to our ally military. This is a sneak peek. We have to add my military to the allies' military, otherwise we will only have the allies' military sum without our military. We want to know what the total team's military population is. We want to chat it to myself. My player number, my military pop, the %d, close quotations marks, going to copy paste this to speed things up. Largest enemy military pop. The prefix and the goal. Ally this is then including our military. And that's our def rule. Now, how can we use these facts also as a fact? I mean, how can we use these goals as a fact? Again, timer triggered, timer sitrep. We up compare the goal if our forces are smaller than the enemy's forces, then we have to trigger actions. In our case, we just chat to ourselves, but we can trigger actions like building military, building a wall, even setting a goal, as we've seen in our previous video about goals. Set a goal that we don't have military superiority, and it has to start a certain strategy or procedure. Now, as last, we have to reset the timer. That means disable timer . Oh, every 30 seconds we want it. Now, this is put in a separate def rule. Sometimes you can put disable timer, enable timer in previous def rules where you use the timer. In this situation we can't, because if we put disable timer, enable timer in this def rule, then this def rule won't be triggered, because the timer triggered will never be triggered, because it's always disabled and then reset. But if we put this rule in the previous def rule here, then if the enemy doesn't have military superiority, this timer would never get reset, and this would repeat itself all game long, because the timer would stay triggered. I hope that explanation is clear. That's why we put a separate def rule afterwards when the timer is triggered, disable the timer, and then re-enable the timer at 30 seconds. We're going to see what this gives. I have a 4 versus 4. My military pop, largest enemy military pop, some ally military pop 4. This would say 3 if we wouldn't include our own. Now if I delete the scout, in a minute it should state emergency enemy military superiority. My military pop 0, largest enemy military pop 1, some ally 3, some enemy 4, and look, emergency enemy military superiority. This is just a very simple example. With the fact IDs, you should have a look at the facts on Leaf's encyclopedia, and the ideas will start pouring in. Resources, soldier counts, building counts, whatever. There's all these facts you can use to do calculations with. That's for next time, to compare. So a lot of options here into making your AI more intelligent. Last video, this is the example that we've just been through. More on calculations next video. We will go over what are all the possible calculations, and we will use goals as variables. In the special, I said or promised that I will work out an example in tutorial video number 11 about post-processing an enemy and count the unit types it trains, and then gather more of the resources that needed for counter units. We have touched on reading the facts and interpreting them. In the fact IDs you can count enemy units, but only the units it has discovered or seen. This is not so with military population and civilian population, that you can read of the enemy without seeing the enemy, but with unit type count you can only count the units that you can see of an enemy, otherwise you would be cheating. So if you count, for instance, to give an example, more than 3 archers, you could trigger a goal that would start creating skirmishes, and that goal could also trigger a reset of the villager distributions and stuff like that. We got the tools to work something out, only I haven't made a clear example of that yet. I will keep that in mind for a future video, but I didn't want to make this video too long, as some people have been saying that 40-50 minutes for a video is too much, and that is correct. I hope this video was clear. I tried to keep it more concise. I went over the theory first, then gave an example and ran the game. I appreciate all the comments and all the suggestions, also corrections and addendums are very welcome. I hope to see you next video. Any suggestions, please leave a comment. Thank you, keep well, and see you next time. Bye.